We are back live with PB Betting College Football Podcast. Mr. Paisley, another great week in the books. We were just talking pre-show, ton of ranked games, a lot of ranked losses, got some upsets, got a little bit of everything, it seemed, this week.
Yeah, definitely was a chaotic week here, Case. A lot of great games coming out on the wire. Like we said, too, just another kind of – we've been very consistent with it where it's a very frustrating week. Had some really good calls, really broke these games down that we'll recap and nailed them, and then some that we came up short, and then also some bad beats that we'll get into. But, yeah, just another frustrating one. Just can't really get, a super, super great week. But all things considered, pretty decent week on the sheets for us here this week.
Yeah, you had a pretty good week, 14-10, so above 500. Anytime we're above 50% is a win. Unfortunately, I was below 500 again at 6-8-2, and it was weird because it felt like I was having a good day or a good week. Like we had some Friday night hits that were nice to start the week. I was on Michigan early, I was on Vandy early, got TCU. And then a couple of games that it looked like was going my way. I should have listened to you about Duke. That Duke Georgia Tech game was unbelievable. We'll get to that, I guess, in the recap also here coming up. But Duke really controlled that game. Just got lost the game outright. Didn't cover. Just could not find. Just a lot of mistakes. They made turnovers in that one. And then also Texas Tech, which was a pick that I really liked. They did not look like the same Texas Tech team that we've seen all year. Not only do they not cover, but they also lose outright. And then also got a couple of pushes. We were talking Notre Dame, of course. I got the push there, missed extra point in that one. UCLA also pushed on that one. Looked like they were covering. So a lot of ups and downs on my page, on my sheet here. But at the end of the day, still below 500, and unfortunately didn't hit any of the locks this week.
Yeah, just some of our bigger ones were the issues this week. But yeah, I feel like if you dig a little bit deeper, we just see the green and red, and we'll do the recaps and stuff. But yeah, definitely if you dig a little deeper, there was a couple we missed by half a point. But that's gambling, and everyone that watches the show knows that. But yeah, I mean, just going through my card again, I cannot stress this enough. The early week and the early games are so good. A lot of green up top, and then a lot of red to end the night, and it's just a frustrating end to the night. But we'll talk about the Louisville game a little bit with the big upset over Miami. We were both on Minnesota. That was a great call. Won the game outright and was your underdog. That was a great pick. Tried to tell you about Georgia Tech. That was crazy because the line was shifting so much towards Duke in that game, but we'll get to a fuller breakdown there. A couple other ones we're not going to talk about, like UConn was a nice win. They're actually playing some good ball right now. Beat up on Boston College, who is a mess right now, a ton of injuries. Central Michigan was a nice bounce back. We broke that game down in one of my picks when I gave out. Kent State, Purdue. I'm not going to mention Purdue the rest of the year. They are dead to me. I really had a lot riding on them. And they got blanked 19-0 against Northwestern. So I know, Case, Northwestern and UCLA, after beating Penn State, they look like they could be some Big Ten contenders here. So I don't know about that.
No, it is crazy. I was making jokes about that yesterday. They both look like great teams. I mean, UCLA hasn't lost since, and now Northwestern pitching the shutout this past weekend. So we'll see how Iowa looks, but it looks like the Big Ten's getting a little more deeper, I think, than we originally anticipated. Who knows? We got some decent teams there mid-pack.
Yeah, they actually are playing better. And then another one I'll shout out is UNLV, Boise State. I was very close to putting that as a lock because I really liked it. Wasn't even a sweat. It went over in the third quarter. It was a really nice pick there. And then SMU Clemson, we won't get to that, but Klubnik was a late scratch. That line dove all the way down 5-6 points. SMU still won the game outright, so definitely some problems there. And Clemson. And then one more big one just to hit on the group of five, if you're interested in that, was the Old Dominion JMU. That was a huge one that we predicted. I was on ODU in that one. They got blown out by 30. They lost it before to Marshall. And it was a lot of turnovers, but you kind of excuse it because maybe a look-ahead spot. But JMU getting back on track. They had their season. They were doing that two-quarterback system in that weird game against Louisville a couple weeks ago. But they kind of look legit. So with USF still leading the pack there. But JMU, if they run the table here and look good and win their conference, they could definitely be a player. So keep your eye on JMU going forward.
Yeah, we talked a lot about JMU too preseason. That was my preseason pick to win the Sun Belt and possibly be a sneaky playoff team. I think they only have one loss, so if they continue winning like this and they run the table, they could be in the conversation here at the end of the season with those other group of five teams. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on them. And then, yeah, great pick on SMU, by the way. That turned out great. They got the win outright over Clemson. I was also happy to see Clemson lose just because their schedule kind of weakens a little bit the rest of the year. I was worried that maybe they'd run the table in the ACC, but looks like that is finally closed. So they're kind of out of the picture now if they weren't already. And then, yeah, overall on the season now, 138 win, 146 losses, and 10 pushes. Seems like we have a record amount of pushes this year. I don't know, just because we're getting so many even numbers, but yeah, already 10 pushes, only a little over halfway through the season. So watch out for hitting records there. And then, yeah, just about 50%. I think your total is over 50. Paisley 87 wins, 86 losses, and then I'm only at 46. So for being below 500, I think like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I'll take 46%, but definitely hoping to turn that around here this upcoming week.
Yeah, and like we said, I mean, everyone has bad beats when you're betting, but I think we definitely had a couple the last couple of weeks that were very frustrating. We'll get into some of these. Cough, cough, Auburn. We are so done with them. We'll break that down. But just some that, yeah, half a point push, like you're saying, these numbers are key. We talk about it all the time. Really could be the difference between a win, loss, push. So, like we always preach, grab that in the best number. We talk about the key numbers, and we'll get to some of them here. But, yeah, they are very important. This is why we preach that all the time, because it really could, swing your units plus or minus.
Yeah, and then really quickly before we get into the recaps, we lost the underdog parlay of the week, like you mentioned, the old Big Ten West parlay. We did hit Minnesota on Friday night, but Paisley, unfortunately, your Purdue Boilermakers couldn't get it done. So looking to bounce back this week. We've hit a couple early in the season. We're right there. I don't think we had any week where we were 0-2, which is a positive. So we just gotta match them together. But we've had some good ones too, like +2, +300 picks. So these aren't all just 1-2 point spreads. We had a couple, heavy underdogs get the outright win. So unfortunately couldn't cash in this week, but of course there's always this upcoming week.
Yeah, and to that point, because we've been a lot of one-on-one, we might have to go back in the records and look. But I think if you take each individual underdog, like if you don't parlay together, I think we'd still be plus units because, like you said, we have a couple plus 200, 300. We're not going 0-2. So could be a strategy going forward if you're listening to this every week. And, we're so close of hitting the parlay. Maybe just split them up, go 1-1 and do the parlay on the side too. But, we're giving out some nice winners with some juicy numbers. So maybe just take them individually too going forward.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. If you did them all solo, I would assume we're definitely positive there. We'd have to go back and look, but I would assume so. All right, with that being said, might as well kick off some of these recaps here. We could go all the way and roll the tape back to Friday. Miami falling short here at home, 24-21. The Louisville is the biggest upset, I'd say, or one of the biggest upsets of the week for sure. Non-ranked Louisville going on the road, knocking off Carson Beck in Miami. I know we talked a little bit Paisley pre-show, but Carson Beck, just disaster of a performance, 4 interceptions. I think his Heisman odds went from like +300 to like +3,000 in the matter of 3 hours here after this game. I wish I called this one before. I can't take credit. I think we both like Louisville with the points. I thought I had enough faith in Miami. I knew they were gonna lose somewhere. I was very confident they are not a national championship contender, and I stand by that. I don't care what happens for the rest of their season. I thought maybe they'd lose later. Kind of a sleepy spot here on a Friday. We hinted at it. I should have went with the all-out pick because this one, it seemed now so obvious, when you play Monday morning quarterback here and looking at it. Should have picked Louisville. We were all over them on the spread, but just not sure. Mario Cristobal, Miami seems to be same old Miami, losing outright here, 24-21 in a game that at the end they were lucky to have a chance. Louisville really controlled this game and could have won. The Miami's lucky here. This thing was only a field goal.
Yeah, this is one we absolutely nailed. We've been calling for this for weeks. We were kind of joking about the Pitt game late in the year, but we were, I kind of said too, this was going to be probably their toughest match until the ACC championship. And it really worked out like that. Louisville jumped out to a big 14-0 lead. Nice little fake punt or a fake field goal on like the 15. You don't really see a lot of those be successful. They really controlled the game. I was really impressed with Louisville's D-line. Miami could not run the ball, that vaunted offensive line that they keep preaching about. Really good pass protection. Carson Beck really wasn't pressured too much, and the interceptions obviously followed. But they really could not run the ball, and Louisville really controlled the game with their defense, and they really put them in good field position, punting, kicking. Their special teams were really solid, and that's what you need to do if you're going to go on the road and beat a top-tier team like this. So a lot of credit to Louisville. Not a lot of people were talking about them because of that Virginia loss they had a couple weeks ago, but that was kind of a lucky win for Virginia if you dig into that box score. And I think Virginia is another team that's a little fluky. I think they're going to definitely lose a couple more down the road here, but everyone's darling right now. They almost lost to Washington State, actually, only won by 2 this past weekend. So got to give a lot of credit to Louisville, and with the ACC opening wide up now, and Louisville having that head-to-head against Miami, I could see Louisville playing for the ACC championship case. I'm telling you, I like Miller Moss and that system, the RPO system. He just runs it really nicely. They got a couple nice wide receivers, the running backs were gashing Miami. That's something too. So we'll highlight some of these teams that we think, are going to be in the playoff and just something to look forward to. Miami's run defense was really taken advantage of, and I feel like Notre Dame didn't really exploit that in the first game. They just weren't electing to run the ball. But if you look at Miami, I think they were rushing for 5-6 yards a pop. So that's something. If you want to be a championship elite contender, they have a couple glaring holes, and then obviously the quarterback play and the coaching was a disaster. They also got a late fumble that Louisville had on the 15 to give it back to Miami. So like you said, very fortunate to be in that game. But the Miami fans were a little too confident, cocky case. I think they were already talking undefeated, ACC championship, rolling right through, maybe national title. And what happens? They go right back to their old ways. So, I'm not a Miami hater, but it was kind of fun to see them fall on their face a little bit here with their fans and everybody getting a little bit, patting themselves on the back a little bit too much. So came back down to earth a little bit here.
Also, how do you lose a game with Malachi Toney on your roster this year? He's been absolutely incredible. Every time he touches the ball, it's like explosive play after explosive play, like, screens. I'm like, man, like, I don't know how you lose with that type of player on your roster, especially you have the talent edge. Just an absolute breakdown, for Carson Beck in Miami. I don't know what the main issue is. They got beat on multiple, it seems like, sides of the ball here. But yeah, he's an incredible player, and I'm not sure how Miami will respond. It'll be interesting to watch. And yeah, that's a good point on Louisville. I didn't even really think about them if they could run the table in their schedule. Looking at it, I mean, it's definitely doable for how wide open the ACC is, and really it's just Miami and Georgia Tech, and then it really opens up wide. So now that they have the head-to-head, that's certainly possible for Louisville. So we'll have to watch them the rest of the way.
Yeah, and we kind of predicted. We said Miami, they had a couple glaring weaknesses, and they really came to light. And, what if I think Malachi Toney has like 90% of their yards, it feels like. What if you remove him from that team? Like, how good is that offense? So he's really been carrying them. And then we saw Carson Beck was playing really clean the first couple games of the year, but those picks are all on him. Like, the offensive line, like I said, was protecting him. It was just bad decisions, bad throws, a couple like in a double coverage, like late. So definitely something you don't want to see for your NFL stock too. And Heisman odds, like you said, he actually had a pretty good shot, went right down the tubes with that 4 interception, could have been 5 interception performance. So Miami falls again, like we predicted in the regular season here.
No, I'm happy to see them go down. I'd like to see them go down a couple more times. I think they honestly will. So we'll have to watch that. Miami. Also, quickly, Friday night, we don't have to highlight it, but North Carolina falling to Cal here. They had a shot at the end of that game. I don't know if you saw it.
They looked okay. They looked okay. Yeah, that was a crazy one. Yeah,
I almost feel bad a little bit I don't at all for Bill Belichick, but I almost do, Paisley. That was another tough one to lose the way that game ended. But late night Friday night, we had a couple good ones. So we'll have to monitor that for the rest of the season. A ton of great Friday games.
Yeah, like we've been preaching. And North Carolina looked like they had a little life. They actually held in there. I like Cal in that game to blow them out, and they definitely held their own. Like you said, could have won outright as 10-point dogs. And then we'll get to Nebraska. We talked about Minnesota, but we'll get to them later in the program case. A little disappointing they're out of Lincoln, Nebraska, too, on that Friday night.
All right, moving on. I guess we could go right into the Saturday games. We'll come back to LSU Vandy since we were just talking Miami. Might as well go right into Georgia Tech, Duke, Paisley. I'm ticked off on this one. Like I said here when we were going over the cards, Duke controlled this game. Like, they were a good team. I forget where I heard it, but they are like the worst of the good teams. Like, they're the worst good team in the country, it seems. Like, they're right there in the ACC. Like, they're moving the ball. They really controlled this game. And I know I said it before, and I know there's 50 other plays in this game, but like, first quarter, Duke's driving down to take a 7-0 lead. I'm like, oh, I'm a genius. They're gonna win this game outright. They fumble the ball. Georgia Tech picks it up, runs it 99 yards. It's a 14-point swing, and it wasn't just that. It was just multiple other drive stalling, plays. And all credit to Georgia Tech. I think they're really good. And we talked about Georgia Tech preseason, and here they are, still unbeaten going into mid-October, late October almost, at this point. But Georgia Tech did enough. They found a way to win over a pretty good Duke team. Duke, shot themselves in their foot a ton. But nonetheless, Georgia Tech gets the win. And now with Miami's loss, they are, Georgia Tech is sitting right there in the driver's seat here in the ACC, getting the big win, 27-18 over Duke. But this one, more on Duke than really Georgia Tech for me.
Yep, I think you feel exactly how I felt after that Illinois game, a couple in week 2 or week 3, whenever that game was. And shout out my cousin Nate again. This is why we don't bet on Duke. Texting him. I got to text him to see if he followed my advice here with the Georgia Tech pick. But this was exactly the reasons why, Case. I displayed it to you. They're just so sloppy. They just shoot themselves in the foot. Maybe little Manny Diaz, like prom, a head coach. Like I feel like this was kind of like his Miami teams, like talented, explosive, could be really on the top end if they just clean up their mistakes, but they kind of just beat themselves up. Like you said, Georgia Tech really didn't do anything crazy in this game to, really dominate the game. They just did enough. They played solid. You just buckled down the red zone a little bit, forced a lot of field goals from Duke. They did their thing, ran the ball kind of methodically the whole game. But like you said, this was more just on Duke, just really throwing up on themselves here. And with the ACC being wide open, with a lot of chaos in the top 25, like a lot of opportunity for some of these teams in that middle pack from maybe like 25 to 40 to really take that next step and come into the top 20, top 15, and maybe fool around with a little playoff position. If they would have won this one, why not? Because it's anybody's at this point. So if you're a Duke fan, if you're a Duke backer, just a very frustrating team. It doesn't remind me a whole lot, or maybe exactly about like the Jets, watching the Jets this year, and they get bet every week, and but they just shoot themselves in the foot, and they just keep penalties, turnovers, and key times. So that is why I gave out the full warning on week 2 after that Illinois loss, and I was never going to bet them again. And I think I'll keep it that way. But yeah, this one was the line movement on this one. This is what we talk about all the time with late movement, early movement. This got steamed all the way to 4.5 Case right before the game. I was following it right like 11:30. They were a 1.5 point dogs to open up. It swings late Saturday morning. Everybody was betting Duke. A lot of people I follow. I didn't see anybody on Georgia Tech, and that got me worried. I was like, what am I missing here? Is this not? But I stuck confident with it. I was about to maybe even switch it late, which is something I normally do not do because it was that lopsided. And I was like, I must be missing something here. And then they did what they did, and like we said, shot themselves in the foot. So, got to give Georgia Tech a lot of credit. Just sometimes just play clean and let the other team mess up. But like you said, now Georgia Tech, Louisville definitely become a race now to maybe challenge Miami for that number 2 spot or maybe even overtake them. So, but yeah, Duke, very, very disappointing if you're a Duke fan or a Duke backer. So, but got to give Georgia Tech a little credit here. But that's some with those late movements. It's not always the exact right thing. It could come back the other way. So, like we said, nothing's 100% here in the gambling space.
Yeah, no, for sure. Georgia Tech money line might have been the best play of the afternoon there on Saturday, just because if somebody liked Georgia Tech a lot, a big opportunity to make money there, just because you were getting plus points, you were getting plus odds if you took them on the money. So, big win for Georgia Tech, right there in the ACC, and yeah, just another disappointing performance there on Duke. Not sure how they respond. Could be a Diaz problem. I didn't really think about that. I mean, he was. I don't know enough. I haven't watched enough Duke football to really see what the issue is, but it is true. I mean, that back when he was head coach in Miami, they were certainly sloppy too. Although I felt like that was just more of a Miami problem, like
Right.
like a program. But that's a good point. Yeah, we'll have to watch that to see how kind of that plays out the rest of the way, because they do have some talent on that team. So will they be able to bounce back and clean it up a little bit and still get to 8-9 wins, or are they gonna fall off, and will this hurt them in games where they're even more of a favorite when they play bottom tier ACC teams? So we'll have to watch that. All right, moving on. We may as well go right into the SEC here. We got a bunch of those games, pretty full slate here in the recap. Vandy 31, LSU 24 at home. I think we were both on this one. Paisley Vanderbilt gets the win. They were the better team in this game. The score was close, but it felt like Vandy always, had the edge in this one. Diego Pavia had a good game, 160 yards, I think only, but you felt confident. He was able to use his legs a lot, got a couple key first downs. 400 total yards here for Vanderbilt. They were up at a couple times by multiple possessions. I think it was a 2-possession game for about half of it. And then LSU did a good job, cutting it back to 3 and cutting it back to 7 at the end there. But yeah, big win for Vandy. Arguably, they're one of their biggest wins in really their program history. I know they have a couple upsets. They got the upset over Alabama last year, but like this was a game where it really feels like Vandy's now solidified themselves as a really good SEC team. I know we talked about it last week when we were breaking it down, but they were the favorite in this game. That we rarely see that. I mean, playing against a team like LSU, and they handle business. A lot of teams don't live up to the expectation and the pressure. They did what they needed to do. They got technically it's a top 10 win, regardless if LSU's truly a top 10 team or not. They were ranked 10th. So Vandy's right there, one loss. They got another big game we'll get to next week against Missouri, but gets the win here. They survive, and they're still a contender here in the SEC, 31-24 over LSU.
Yeah, so it was a big one for Vanderbilt, honestly. Like you said, being the favorite, little expectations on them, and they came through. And this was kind of the opposite of the same way the Duke game, where there was a ton of money coming in on Vanderbilt, didn't see a lot of support for LSU, and it did turn out to be the right side. So it doesn't always go one way or another. It does always balance itself out. But yeah, this was another one where there was almost too many people on Vanderbilt. And I'm like, is it too obvious? Like, they are laying points. This is crazy. But like you said, they really did control the game. They deserved to win. LSU had some fight. A lot of problems going on at LSU. I don't know. With all these coaching firings, hot seats, whatever. Brian Kelly's definitely getting a little warmer here. We kind of called this. If there's going to be an SEC team that might just go on an opposite of the win streak and lose 4 or 5 games in a row, and I think LSU could be on that track. We discussed their limitations on offense. Nussmeier was definitely a little banged up in this game, but he actually did okay. I thought he played pretty good. A lot more points than I was thinking in this game. The total was around 47, 48, and both offenses had a ton of success. Vanderbilt really rushed and did their ground attack against LSU, 239 on the ground, like you said, so really controlled the game there. If they get that lead or they could keep it within range, Vanderbilt's run game is just so creative, so dynamic. They chew so much clock. So I was the time of possession 36-22 in minutes. So Vanderbilt's a tough team. If they get you in a lead, if they get you almost like a triple option team light, but they do have that nice option to throw the ball. Diego Pavi, still not a polished thrower, but he's really good making some plays. They were saying on the broadcast, like the Pavi of magic and stuff. Really does remind me of a little Johnny Manziel, just running around, making crazy plays and finding a guy 10 seconds after the snap. Like, he's fun to watch, and that's why I really like this Vanderbilt team. The defense did enough, I thought. Definitely wasn't their best performance of Vanderbilt, but they kind of need that to come into form a little bit to help out their run attack and a ground game on offense to really, pair the two well if they really want to take it to that next level. But yeah, this was my surprise team, and with only one loss case, like you said, I think they could really stack up a lot of wins. I think you're going to see probably the number 2 seed or maybe both teams in the SEC, maybe with 2 conference losses. So I think it's going to be a lot more chaos. I think it's going to come down to some tiebreakers and stuff. So I really like Vanderbilt here. I really do think they're taking that next step. I trust Diego Pavia. Clark Lee as a head coach, too, has got to get a lot of recognition because this program was in the dumps, like absolute dumps, 2 wins, 1 win a year. And now he's turned them around to a top 15, top 10 team. That's very impressive. And he's a name with all these coaches he's not really getting talked about a lot. And he really brought this program up. So I think he deserves a ton of credit. Diego Pavia the last year and this year deserves a ton of credit too. And then, just lastly with Brian Kelly again, I love to throw dirt on him while I can, but this was not an impressive performance. And they have the talent. He left Notre Dame to go win championships. They can't even make the playoff case. They're really struggling to make the playoff the last couple of years. So it's hard to win a championship if you can't make the playoff. And it doesn't look like it's going to be different this year. I think they're going to keep sliding. Just this offense, I don't know what happened to it. The run game is just still non-existent. They're throwing a lot on Nussmeier's shoulders. He had a good game, but he can't save you out of a lot. So really it was just very impressive Vanderbilt in this one. And I think LSU could lose a lot more here. I think it's going to get a little ugly there for LSU going forward.
Yeah, they're Brian Kelly, I think, is definitely on the hot seat there. If you look at like 247 and read some of those boards, I mean, the fan base is not happy and the boosters, and they're expecting a lot better from him. And I think it's going to be the craziest coaching, carousel in recent history this year, just because of all the openings. Florida today, of course, Napier finally fired. We talked about it a week ago, how they kind of announced it. So very odd timing there, but I guess they like to do it before a bye week. So I guess that's why they went ahead and did it. But it's going to be crazy. I think Brian Kelly, that job could be open. That would be a really surprising one. But there, Florida State. I mean, there's a ton of openings around the country. I mean, even smaller schools, there's a lot moving around. And some of these jobs that are opening, if you're going to go and steal from another team, then those jobs opening. I mean, we might have a situation where like 10 to 15 Power 4 teams next year of different coaches, just based off of half of them getting fired and then, another 4 or 5 leaving schools going elsewhere. So it's going to be really chaotic. And LSU, very disappointing for them. certainly I can see them losing a few more times. And yeah, Vandy is for real. So we'll have to watch how that plays out. But yeah, if you're Brian Kelly and LSU, you got to be very frustrated after another performance like this. And it seems like it's just becoming a pattern here, year in and year out. Can't get over the hump.
Yeah, and I think they're showing around the country, like you said, these boosters or these people with the power are not afraid to yank these guys earlier in the buyouts and stuff. Money doesn't seem to be really an issue. So
Yeah.
we talked about the Penn State opening. We thought maybe that was going to be the only big, big time job. Now Florida opened up. Like you said, a couple others that could open up. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason. I do think they'll maybe give him one more year because he is still only, I think it's his third year on a 10-year contract or something. But like we said, they're not afraid to buy it out. But I think maybe they'll give him one more year. But I think he's gone. I think his days are numbered there at LSU. I don't think it's working.
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's going to be crazy there. So we'll have to watch that. And yeah, I think Norvell will be the next one to go and too in Florida State. His days are. And I saw his buyout, by the way. That is insane. It is.
Yeah.
It is crazy. It's like $90 million or something like that. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then Napier too, not to change pages again, but Napier, he's owed half of his in the next 30 days. His is only like 20 million, so it's a little less, but not, I mean, last $20 million. But he owes it's owed like half of that in the next 30 days. It's just ridiculous how all these buyouts. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's definitely getting chaotic. Going to be a crazy couple of months here. All right, moving on. We got a ton of games here. Washington at Michigan. We could go quick, I guess, on this one. Michigan handled business. I was on Michigan. I know we were kind of going back and forth. Washington just did not look like themselves here. Michigan controlled this game. Could have been worse, I think, than 24-7. Michigan left some points on the board. Not a lot of great offense, just sloppiness by Washington. The Michigan defense played well to shut them down, and they did enough to get the win 24-7 at home. Not sure how good really Washington is. Maybe they were getting a little bit hyped up here in the last couple of weeks, but Michigan did what they needed to do. They got the win. They were home. So, tough spot for Washington, got to travel, halfway through the country. But Michigan did what they needed to do. They get the win 24-7. I'm not sure if they hop back in the top 25, they'll probably be on the bubble again here, but do what they need to do, get the win and to get the cover.
Yeah, honestly, not too much, not really an exciting game here, but gotta give props to Michigan. I was kind of bagging them last week a lot, but it's still not completely sold on them. I think this was more in Washington. Like we said, this is one I wish I had back because I didn't put on the page, but I did bet Washington. I was going back and forth all week, and I'm like, I think Washington, too many points. I like them, but again, all these spots, if you have these like other factors like spot, travel, those are favoring the teams now that are covering and winning. And it really did here because, like you said, Washington, these West Coast teams are not traveling to the Midwest, and the Midwest teams are not traveling well to the West. So really, really keep that in mind with a lot of these games. And this really played out like that. Washington just never got off the bus, didn't score till late in the first half on a 2-minute drive, and then they really couldn't do anything else. Just look at some of these stats. They had 40 yards rushing, 1.7 yards a rush, time possession 37-22 in favor of Michigan. So really, again, a clean performance by Michigan. They did this. Again, good win against a, okay team in the Big Ten. But again, I still have my reservations about Michigan stepping up and beating some of these upper tier teams. But I think they could really beat and handle these, middle tier teams. So Sherrone Moore put the blue collar jacket on. I guess it seemed to work, but still don't trust them long term. I still don't think they're that great. But got to give them credit here for getting the win at home. You're right. Defense did look pretty good. So got to give them credit.
Yeah, and not a ton of takeaways like you said in this game. It was not a lot of excitement around the Big Ten this week, so we had it on the card. They get the win, do what they need to do. But yeah, I'm not thoroughly impressed with Michigan. We'll see. We'll kind of see how they bounce back and finish out their season here. Definitely a lot of improvement still needs to come their way. This one too, SEC game, Ole Miss at Georgia. This one's very frustrating, Paisley. On Ole Miss with 7.5 points, they were controlling most of this game at least. On the scoreboard, they were ahead through practically 4 quarters or almost 4 quarters. Not only do they slip up and lose the game here in the 4th quarter after Georgia, I think, went on a 17-0 run, but they find a way to cover. Georgia does. They cover the 7.5. They win it by 8. Lane Kiffin, typical Ole Miss, style here, giving up all these points, 43 points to Georgia. And they not only lose, but the cover is ultimately what we care more about as a betting page. So this one was very frustrating. I didn't even see. I was paying attention. I was watching this game at a bar, and I swear I looked away for 5 minutes, and there was just a 14-point swing. Almost just went 3 and out or whatever, punted. Next thing I know, Georgia goes right down the field, takes the lead. I mean, Georgia looked good offensively. I mean, 500 yards, like great. but I still am not sold on either of these teams. I know we talked about it a week ago. And, this game, it might be misinterpreted because this late in the season, everybody now might be crowning Georgia again. I'm already seeing it this week. I'm like, hold on a second. Like, it took a lot for them to come back and win. Oh, there's hardly any defense here in this game. I don't know what happened with the SEC. A ton of yards, like 1,000 combined yards, or something crazy. Frustrating as a better to be on the Ole Miss side, but just a crazy game. And I'm still not entirely sold on either of these games, on either of these teams. Defense just non-existent here. But whatever, Georgia gets the win, 43-35 over Ole Miss.
Yeah, Georgia does it again. This was another one. I did not put Ole Miss on the card. I really liked it, and then I backed off. Still took them in real life, but just didn't feel confident enough on the page. And like you said, this should have been an Ole Miss cover all the way. They were leading the game at some points. This was just a classic Big 12, 2008 matchup where it's just back and forth. You go take a bathroom break, and there's 2 touchdowns you miss, like you said, if you look away for a little bit. So crazy swings in this game. So yeah, just not a whole lot of impressive takeaways. There's still some areas. I actually was a little more impressed with Ole Miss after this, watching this game. And to go on the road with that Chambliss, the quarterback only played D2 last year. Like, they control right from the get. I think they scored their first drive, and they looked comfortable on offense the whole game in that vaunted Sanford Stadium down there in between the hedges. So Ole Miss was really confident, but this was the one area it's just their defense. I think their defense was just a little overhyped. They looked really good in that LSU game, but now I think we said now that LSU's offense is so broken, so not too impressive there. They got gashed on the ground, which is where I was a little worried about Georgia. They are elite running the ball. That's one thing they do very well. I still don't love the quarterback. He had a solid game, very efficient, still putting up a bunch of numbers here. But again, how are they going to look against top-tier competitions? We're talking playoff. We're talking semifinals. If you're talking in that vein, like I said, I just don't know if I could trust Georgia at that level yet. And they have the record. This one easily could have been another loss. So it's 3 losses you could have had. So right. I just don't I don't buy this team long-term. They could keep luck boxing their way. Some people do it all the way to the playoffs, sometimes the national championship, and then they become the runner-up. So it does happen. So it's not going to say it's going to come all crumbling down, but they really had an advantage against Ole Miss's defense here, running the ball, like I said, just 510 total yards looking at it. Again, time possession 37-22. A lot of themes here with if you could run the ball, chew the clock, control the game, kind of keep the other team's offense off the field, it does result in wins, and it does result in a good chance of winning. But I'm 100% with you, Case. It was a nice win by Georgia here, but again, just another non-impressive one. So I don't know what to make of this team long term, but Ole Miss, it was a very good fight, but I think they're kind of what we thought, good pop, good offense, but again, not a top tier, not a top 10, not a top 5 team. They're ranked at number 5. I think we kind of called that a couple weeks ago. So this was one game we were kind of both selling both teams, and they, kind of played out in the opposite fashion where it was a high scoring, not an ugly, low scoring game, and came away from it not being too impressed from either. But Ole Miss's offense, got to give them a shout out because that was impressive going on the road in that environment and really just looking comfortable, controlling the game. But their defense just couldn't hold up, and that's what's going to hold them back in the long term here.
Yeah, Ole Miss offense was good. I'll give them some credit there on the road. Also, with Georgia, they're going to be in the playoff. I mean, I'll just say it right now. The way that their schedule's lined up here, they have the bye week. They have, they're a weaker side now, the SEC. Florida, Mississippi State, Texas, who looks terrible, by the way. Should have lost to Kentucky this past week. They're terrible. Charlotte, and then they got the game at Georgia Tech at the end of the season. Even if they lose that game, they're still in. And honestly, I don't want to get 6 weeks ahead, but Georgia will show up for that game. I mean, it's a rivalry game, so I'm not going to, overreact. Whatever happens in that game, I don't think it will matter. I think both of those teams will probably be in the playoff. Georgia Tech probably more questionable just because the conference is weaker. So we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, this Georgia team, it just seems like there's a couple teams like that every year that get a nice path. They win a lot of close games. Remember TCU the year they were in the college football championship game. I think this Georgia team's a little bit better than that TCU team, but it's very similar where you get 2, 3, 4 games you could lose. They squeak by, you get some momentum, the schedule kind of opens up, you get some luck, and then here they are. So credit to Georgia. They will be in the hunt here at the end of the season, but yeah, not thoroughly impressed here. This is a game that they could have lost, should have lost. Ole Miss really, that's a good point about, honestly, impressed me more, on the road, their offense. So you got to be a little bit disappointed if you are Ole Miss, and you felt like one got away, one that you really could have had, but Georgia does enough. They get the win.
And that's just one thing with the look ahead spots. I know we talked about it previewing this game, and I'm going to keep saying I think the look ahead spots are a real thing this year because they were always talking about the Washington State Ole Miss game, and they weren't looking at any other games. And it's like it was just one bad game. They were obviously looking ahead. Lane even said they weren't even preparing for Washington State, but you never know what to take seriously what he says in press conferences. But I'm telling you, that's something to look forward to. Big two takeaways from the season so far. This travel with these bigger conferences in the Big Ten, and the travel in the ACC is a real thing. And I think these look-ahead spots before a big-time game, so maybe look to fade a team if they have a look-ahead spot or something they're not really preparing for, because I think that is something that is coming to light here and is kind of being profitable at least.
Another game here in the SEC. We'll come back quickly to Texas Tech, but since we're talking Georgia, we might as well talk to right into Alabama. They look great again. Really dominated most of this game against Tennessee. The first half was close. Tennessee had a shot to cut it to one possession going into halftime, and then they threw a pick six. It really just changed like that. And ultimately, I know there was a little bit of life at times in the third quarter for Tennessee, but once that pick six happened, Paisley, the game just felt over. And, we're just a podcast. We might as well just be overreactors at that point. Like, I knew it was over. It just felt like Tennessee was dead in the water at that point. I was trying to stay confident for them, but it's why I just bet Alabama. And as much as they were questionable, I think coming in here, it was just, I just felt like there was enough of a talent gap where I'm not saying I could have predicted that pick six, but I just felt like as the longer the game goes on, the more Alabama could pull away. Like if this game went 8 quarters, hypothetically, I could see Alabama just slowly wearing Tennessee out, and it kind of happened. 37-20. I don't think Tennessee's a bad team by any means, but it just seems like Alabama's cooking on all cylinders here. 4-0 now in the SEC. I would put them probably at number 3 in the country. I know they have the horrible loss to Florida State, but as far as a power rating goes, I think that behind Ohio State, Indiana, they're right there now. They've solidified themselves. They get the win. I know they're at home, 37-20 over Tennessee here.
Yeah, that, like you said, the pick six was the biggest part of the game. That's just such a huge swing, especially right before halftime. Like that's just all you're talking about in the locker room, and it just really sets you up. But wasn't a bad play call, actually. Like, if you looked at it from the one angle behind Aguilar, they actually had him open. It was just a horrendous throw. It was like right to the Alabama guy, and he had a good, outside. He had a lane to throw it, just a bad throw. And I don't know, Case. At least for me, I just feel like every time Tennessee goes to Alabama, for my whole life, something like this happens where they just can't put it together for some reason. I don't know if it's some voodoo magic or what, but there's just some things they just cannot do well. They always seem to mess up. They always seem to embarrass themselves at Alabama when they play them. Now, they had a couple successful games last 2 or 3 times when Alabama came to them, but I was a little hesitant. I put it on the card, betting Tennessee. I didn't love it. I prefaced that in the preview because of how good Alabama looked and everything, but this was what I was worried about, that Tennessee would kind of do it to themselves, almost in a Duke style, where they just shoot themselves in the foot, and it's just hard to take these programs at that top tier level, like we keep talking about, are in a serious conversation because they are just a little sloppy. Like, I love Heupel. The offense, still put up a ton of yards. It was a little bit of garbage time-ish because they were fighting back down 2 or 3 scores. Alabama playing some soft coverage, but it's just hard to take them seriously because they just cannot button up their own mistakes, and it's just a lot of sloppy turnovers. A big moment, you just know they're going to, mess up. And with Alabama, you never feel that. You feel like they're going to make the right play. They're going to make the right call on 4th down. They're going to, make the pick six when they need it. So Alabama's cooking up something special, though. That's why this is a team that I loved going into the year. Haven't been able to bet them because these numbers are out of whack, but they're still covering them. So you got to give them a lot of credit. And I'd agree with you. I'd maybe put them even 2 or 3. I think they actually would be better than Indiana maybe at this point. But again, still, that's a hypothetical that the SEC loves to do hypotheticals and win those. But yeah, love this Alabama team. They really are showing a lot. They got one more game against South Carolina until their bye week. That is much needed, but South Carolina looks like they are dumpster fire. Also, could be another coach on the hot seat too with Shane Beamer. He looks like he's lost it, and that team is bad. So, but yeah, Kalen DeBoer, love that he came back here, having a good season this year. He really deserves it. He's a good guy, good coach, and everybody's put him on notice. And Ty Simpson, again, that passing attack is elite. They are a very, very good passing team. Just need a little bounce in the run game, which I think they'll get better at that and scheme some things up. But yeah, this was an Alabama control game, really controlled it. Looked like they should have covered the spread the whole game. So tons of credit to Alabama. And Tennessee just, again, can't take that next step to really become a top 10 solidified team. They're just kind of with Ole Miss, I feel like, Case, like just missing a big chunk of something where they just can't be that top 12 or top 10 team to really make a push for a national championship.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like a complete SEC hater here, but Tennessee's just another team now, in my opinion, that's overrated. Like I just never really, I don't think they're not a playoff team, in my opinion. I think that a lot of these SEC teams are getting propped up just a little bit. I'm not saying the Big Ten's all that great because I think the SEC, as a conference has a lot more meat in the middle of this year. But I just think a lot of these teams that are 5 through 15 are really 12 through 25, and then some maybe should be off the ranking, like Texas. And I think Texas is terrible. I really do. Anyway, not to go off on Texas again there, but yeah, Tennessee disappointment. I agree. The 4th and 1 or the whatever it was right before half, I like the call, and you don't have any timeouts, so you really can't run the ball. The difference is just that Alabama was ready for it. They knew the circumstances. I don't know if it's Kalen DeBoer, the D coordinator, or who it was, but it was clear as day that safety, those corners, they were right there on the ball. They knew it was going to be a quick pass. They knew it was going to be a screen of some sort of end zone. And they, almost reminds me of the Super Bowl there with Russell Wilson when he threw the pick, on the goal line. It's like it was so like obvious. It happened so quick. And, Aguilar, I just think was staring down where he was going with the ball. I think it was predetermined. I don't hate the call. I like the call, really. I mean, you have to throw it there, but just poorly executed, and Alabama saw it coming. It seemed like a mile away. And that's just the difference. And I don't know if it's coaching staffs or the two programs, but yeah, Alabama seems like they're always a step ahead. And it's because I think they are. Like they were more prepared for that play, and it was poorly executed by Tennessee. So not the only reason they lost, but yeah, definitely a large part.
No, it's a great point. They're always a step ahead. That's a good way to put it. Like Tennessee's just always chasing, always trying to be, like Alabama or better. And it's just Alabama still, through these different coaches, are always a step ahead. But that was my exact thinking too. When they were lined up for 4th and 1, I liked the call, but like you said, there was only a couple seconds left. You knew you had to pass it there. So yeah, it was a tough one. But yeah, Tennessee, and I feel like some of these teams, like I think Ole Miss and Tennessee, I just kind of compared them. Last year, I feel like was the year to do something because Tennessee's defense was really good. Ole Miss's defense was like top 3. They had Jackson Dart, was looking good in the NFL. Tennessee, I think, just had the wrong quarterback and Nico, so that is definitely a thing where you're going to just look back and think like, if we had it that year, this and that, you could always play the what ifs, but we kind of saw this with this Tennessee team the last couple of weeks with close games to Mississippi State and Arkansas. So really trust your data points. There was some truth in those close games and skating by those lower level SEC teams. And it did show here, and they weren't really too competitive in the second half here against Alabama.
Another SEC game. We'll circle back to the Big 12 here, but we're talking SEC. Missouri getting the big win on the road at Auburn, 23-17. This one in overtime. Another just game paces. I think both of us here want to shoot ourselves picking. This is a game Auburn once again controlled. They looked like they were going to win. Missouri did a great job. They came back. They're on the road. They forced overtime. And when this game went to overtime, I just really had no confidence. I didn't know what was going to happen. I know, you were going back and forth on it, but Missouri gets the win, 23-17. I thought this is where Auburn finally gets, picks off one of these SEC games they should have won. They should win. They control the game. They're at home, but they fall short. And Bo Prabula also just didn't look fantastic again. I don't know. I don't know. I think he's still great. I think he's a good player, but it just seemed like some of that magic is wearing off here in the middle parts of the year. But they do enough. They get the win, and you just got to be a motivator. That's so big in college football. You just got to find a winner. He's a gritty player. They do enough, but not really thoroughly impressed by them here. But they find a way on the road in a hostile environment. But yeah, definitely more, I think, on Auburn here than I am impressed with Missouri. Just Auburn just lost this game, 23-17 in overtime.
Yeah, this one was the worst one of the week. There's always one case we come on these recaps, and there's always one that really just grinds us down to a hold. I think Auburn might have been that last week too. So back-to-back winners, congratulations. Throw another name into the hot seat. I think Hugh Freeze at Auburn is not going to survive too long. So a lot of chaos, a lot of just not living up to expectations. Like we said, this team, I feel bad for the team. Like they are so in these games. They could have like 3 or 4 of these wins. They're 0-4 in SEC play. They easily could be 4-0 if they really maybe 3-1 at best. Like just a frustrating season for Auburn. I previewed it. That's why I didn't know what to do for my second lock. Again, I just got to maybe let you pick it or something next week because I was between a lot of teams. Vanderbilt, Auburn, went with the wrong one. But this is what I was worried about because it turned out to be exactly what I thought. Just an ugly quarterback play on both sides, but especially Jackson Arnold. I just don't like him, but I feel like they're just in good spots. The defense is so good. They did all they could. Like you said, really bottled up Perbula, who we also mentioned, before the game. I just don't think he has it. It was kind of like watching a, mirror here between Jackson Arnold and him. Just cannot throw the ball. Good runners, good athletes. But again, that's not going to win against these big time games. You need to win from the pocket. You need to be able to throw the ball a little bit. But this Auburn team, if I was an Auburn fan, like we'd think of, what if we were other fans of other teams? I'd be so frustrated if I was an Auburn fan. Like this year was supposed to be better. They dumped a lot of money into this year. They just didn't get the quarterback right. I just didn't get the Jackson Arnold thing. It's really not working out. So that's another one, kind of like a Tennessee last year, where they have all the pieces, good run game, good receivers, defense is stout, like top 10, but it's just the quarterback. The most important position is just the part that's really letting you down. Offensive line's not great too, so I'll shout out that too. It's not 100% on Jackson Arnold. He's, he does create a lot of it. He holds on to the ball a lot, but the offensive line is definitely a struggle too. They're good in run blocking, but the pass blocking definitely still needs a lot of work. But yeah, I mean, they were up late in this game. They were up 17-10. You have that lead with a good defense, and then they let Missouri score late in the game, and then went to overtime. I was thinking maybe they could pull it out, but crazy overtime too. Auburn missed a field goal. Then Missouri just had a chip shot field goal. They missed it too, so Auburn got lucky to go to the second overtime. And then Missouri went right down, scored, got the 2 points. And then right when that happened, it kind of felt like those lower scoring games, once one team gets a touchdown, it feels like 2 or 3 scores. So very, very disappointing for Auburn. Missouri, like you said, kind of what we thought, good team, kind of like I'd put them in the Ole Miss, Tennessee bucket, could maybe pick off a team or two, but I don't see them, going to Atlanta, playing for, a legit SEC title. I just don't think they're there yet. I think Eli Drinkwitz is doing a good job there at that school and really building them back up. But it's a different beast case. And, we know this watching football a long time, from breaking through that next barrier to really be considered a top 10 team and be taken seriously. And Auburn's definitely not there now, obviously, but I just still fear that with Missouri. Really big win. Did you see the guys were talking smack at the coin toss in overtime, and then they did back it up, and they're like, we're going to sack you. And then they did sack Jackson Arnold a couple times. So got to give you prop there. If you're going to talk your talk there, and they backed it up. But yeah, very, very, very disappointing for Auburn. I feel like I'm an Auburn fan this year because I bet them, I think, 5 straight weeks. And I feel for their fans here.
Yeah. I mean, in the SEC, there's always a shot one of these teams, this could happen to a team. Their schedule was loaded. I mean, you got Oklahoma, A&M, Georgia, Missouri, all back to back to back to back. I mean, it's crazy. But watch out. I mean, I think, I don't know if they'll make a bowl game or not. They still got to play Alabama. They got to go to Vandy, so it doesn't get much easier. They have Arkansas coming up, which, could be a win there, but, they gave A&M a run for their money. I know we didn't talk about it, but this past week, I know you cashed in on Arkansas with the points there. But watch out for Auburn at Vandy at the end of the season. That could be a sneaky upset game that could maybe push if Vandy's like a playoff hinge team, that could be a game that Vanderbilt could get trapped on, and that could maybe be the one big win Auburn does get this year, because they are right there. I still think they have to pick one of these teams off, but it's true. It's how they respond. I mean, if the team's beaten to death and they're, have no reason to play, it's really, how do these teams respond? How does Hugh Freeze keep this together? I agree. He's also another one on the hot seat of like 20 different names. He's definitely, his seat's getting warm down there. So we'll see how they close out the season. Got to be disappointed. See if they get a few wins together. But yeah, another just heartbreaker for them, losing out right here.
Yeah. And just one point, like we stress this, a lot of people that you listen to, the quarterback position is so important. I know everyone knows that, but you watch some of these teams, there's a ton of teams in college. And like I said, Auburn's the best example where they have such a good roster, good team. They're in these games, but I just feel like the quarterback's holding them back. So, I know all these teams are trying to get who they think is the best guy, best fit for their system. But, look at some of these top tier teams. Like you look at Ohio State, Indiana, Alabama, just to name the top 3. What they all have in common? Quarterbacks are really, really good and playing at high level. So quarterback play is something that is so important and will always be here in college football and the NFL.
Yeah, you have a quarterback, you have a chance, and if you don't have a quarterback, you're pretty much screwed. Is how I would look at it. All right, moving on. We'll do a couple Big 12 games, and then we'll close out with Notre Dame, USC. So Big 12, we had Arizona State get the win over Texas Tech, 26-22. This is when, Paisley, I'm looping these games together just because I think this is the point of the year. This was the week where the Big 12 breaks wide open. The Wild West is about to happen. Arizona State just when people started to sell them, pulls off a big win over Texas Tech, who we both thought was starting to run away with it. I said it a week ago. I finally got there with Texas Tech. And what do they do? Right when I'm there, they say not so fast, and they lose the game outright here, 26-22 to Arizona State. And then also BYU getting the big win, 24-21 over Utah, the Holy War, as they call it. They were getting 3.5. They end up winning the game outright. BYU, similar to years past, just a sneaky team where they kind of under the radar remain undefeated. And here they are at like 7-0, just unbeaten here. Right when the season matters most, they get a huge win over Utah, game that could matter with tiebreakers at the end. So now all of a sudden you got Texas Tech, you got Arizona State, BYU, Utah, Houston's in the mix. You have a ton of Big 12 teams starting to get in the mix. And if they start beating each other up, then you get to the point where you might have a 2-loss Big 12 team. So, Iowa State, who is, September, the best team, now all of a sudden they could be back in the mix. I don't dare say them. Kansas State, who we sold early, 2 losses. I mean, you start putting some wins together. This is where you're going to get the Wild West. So I'll let you take it however you want. But Arizona State gets the win over Texas Tech, back in the mix with Sam Levitt. And then BYU remains unbeaten over Utah, 24-21.
Yeah, no one's dead in the Big 12 to the last game, like we know from last year. But yeah, we just talked about quarterback play. I think both these games really came down to quarterback play. Got to start with Sam Levitt. The difference between Phil Sims, I think that's the Giants quarterback, Jeff Sims, and Sam Levitt, they got blown out by 40. Now they beat a top 10 team at home. So like we just mentioned, quarterback play is so important. Levitt did look good. He definitely was moving around a little bit better. I think there was a story that came out, Case. Remember I think they said it was a pickup basketball game that he got injured, actually. So I might have got that one right. Still not confirmed. Maybe it'll come out later in the year. But he did look good. Just looking at some of the stats here, 319 passing against this Texas Tech defense that was playing really good. But Arizona State really controlled it. Texas Tech had a little late push. And Texas Tech was without their starting quarterback, Baron Morton. But the backup was good. Hammond, like we said, came in that Utah game, looked pretty good. Played okay here, didn't play exceptionally well. But like we said, Case, every time you think, all right, Big 12 is going to separate, we thought Texas Tech, next week, boom, upset city, and now it's absolute chaos. So that's why we love college football. These were great games to watch, too, both this one and the BYU game, super tight, back and forth. Just some good, clean football. It wasn't like a mess or, like fumbles and interceptions all over the place. So this was a good one. But, yeah, Arizona State definitely the right side here. So, as you're looking week by week here, every time you feel comfortable about something, don't get too comfortable because some crazy is going to happen that week. It's a lot of credit Arizona State. I still think Texas Tech is okay. But, again, I don't know if they're a top 5 team or, even top 10 now. I don't know if you could classify them that. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. Really good story, really good transfer portal class like we talked about. But I was always just a little skeptical with them even the last couple of weeks. They looked really good. They were crushing teams. But, again, Big 12 is a huge difference from trying to win, a couple playoff games, winning a championship. So I don't know if they're in that tier yet, but I still think they have some life. I don't think they're completely dead and, an absolute terrible team are going to get bounced early in the playoff if they make it there. And then, like you said, BYU, they got a good quarterback, that freshman that they paid a lot of money for, wears number 47 or 48. It looks very weird for a quarterback, but he's awesome and he's legit and he's really carrying this team. Like we said, he runs the ball really, physically. He's a really good 5-star quarterback. Like we said, these quarterbacks, like you said, you have a shot, and he's a really good quarterback. I think last year's BYU team was a lot of flukiness when they were 9-0 or 8-0, I think, late in the year, and they lost their last 2 or 3 games in a row. This team feels a little different. They actually feel a little legit. I don't know if they're like, top 15 playoff material, but it feels a little more sustainable, consistent. Defense is playing pretty solid. I think you had BYU on your card in this one. I also had that, but just didn't put it on my card. So that was a nice one there. And BYU, I think, beat Utah the last 3 years or 4 years in a row. So Utah fans are not going to be happy with that one. And look how I called it with Utah. Just a little fool's gold. They can't really pass the ball. Love Devin Dampier, but just can't throw it. And again, if you can't throw in this league, you're not going to do really well. So I think it was just really hindering them. So Arizona State, BYU, really big winners this week. That was very, very impressive wins in the Big 12.
Yeah, you got 10 teams, I think, right now in the Big 12 that could win it. My prediction is the winner. My prediction right now is the Big 12 is going to have one team in. It's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be chaotic, but I think that Big 12 championship game, that's going to be electric, whoever it is, because it's going to be that auto bid for, who gets in. So that's going to be just a crazy game. Maybe if BYU, like maybe there's a situation that there's like an 11-1, and if they, you could have like an SMU thing, maybe where the loser could still sneak in if the SEC is like, if there's 9-3 teams hovering, that'll be a decision. I don't want to get way ahead of ourselves, but a lot of excitement. I do think BYU is a little bit better than they were last year, but I think their schedule's now going to get a little more difficult than it was the first 8 weeks. They still got to play Texas Tech coming up. They got to play Iowa State. I was looking at it before. I think they got to play Cincinnati. So it's only those two right now unbeaten in the Big 12. So it's gonna break wide open, but definitely going to be the, as they say, the most frisky and fun conference here, basically closing out the year. So looking forward to it. We'll see how they close out, but yeah, a lot of fun. And right now is when it starts to happen. End of October, November. It's when they said bigger picture here, college football playoff. Oh, it ruins everything. All these teams just get in. Losses don't matter. Well, now we have about 40 games in the Big 12 from here to the end of the year that are all going to matter, because all of a sudden, one loss Big 12 teams have a chance to still be a contender in the playoffs. So it's going to be a lot of fun here closing out the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think we were both in lockstep with that. I love the expanded playoff. I think 12 is a good number because, like you said, now it's a lot more interesting. A lot of more teams are still alive. And I think the Big 12 and ACC are so similar. I think just for the next couple of years here, I think it's only going to be one, like you said, maybe two if they get lucky bid teams. So I still think it's going to be just one bids and then a lot of bids from the Big 10 and SEC and then that one group of five. But it's always going to be entertaining, and that's why we love it. Love the Big 12.
All right, closing out Missouri. What am I saying? I already covered all SEC. Don't need to talk about them again. Notre Dame at home in the rain, Paisley. You called it. You called it like a meteorologist a week ago. You said it's going to be bad weather. Let's look at the storms. You were right. There was some Midwest storms out there. So if we have any listeners out there, hope everybody is dry and safe, and you weren't impacted too much by the weather. Notre Dame gets the win, 34-24. I know Paisley, Notre Dame fan, but this one from even a better, very frustrated. You had the team total, which you got screwed on. I had Notre Dame -10, which on the page I got screwed on because of the missed extra point, which should have known. It was wet. There were a lot of craziness, special teams. Notre Dame, my point of view as an outsider, I felt like they controlled most of this game. They just dominated on the ground. I know USC had a late lead. It was kind of strange, like late third quarter or even early fourth quarter when they went up 3 or whatever. But then that lasted like 10 seconds or just went back to kickoff, literally 10 seconds, not even just figure of speech. And then Notre Dame still found a way to cover for some people if you got it at 9.5. But a little bit of a crazy game, kind of as planned in a way, 34-24 hitting around the totals here. But they get the win, and Notre Dame now really over their last kind of hurdle of the season. And because of the way the rest of the season is going for other teams, it seems like as long as they win out, they'll be safely in here at this point. USC got to feel like Lincoln Riley. You let one slip away here with that lead late and a chance to finally break through there at Southern Cal, but just not enough power for them. Notre Dame gets the win by 10, 34-24 at home.
Yeah, I think crazy is a good word to describe this game. It was definitely a lot of back and forth. This team is going to probably give me a heart attack by the end of the season with the Miami game, the Texas A&M game. Just a lot of close calls here. But, yeah, they're just doing enough to, win these games. And I just still don't think they're playing their best ball. Like, they're winning these games by 10, and that's what's scary about this in the big picture. Now, can they get there? I don't know. But this was an interesting game because I really came in with a lot of doubts on this defense, and that's why I kind of leaned the over. And it still almost got there in the rain, like you said, called that. So that was a nice meteorologist call. Got to mark that down for the first time ever maybe on the pod here. But yeah, pretty even game. But like you said, I think just in the key moments, like we talked about that Alabama-Tennessee game, maybe a little bit in the Georgia game, like the key moments, I just felt like Notre Dame really excelled. And then USC just had a couple bad turnovers or a couple bad blunders, like you said, with the special teams, missing that tackle. And then Jarian Price took it, 80 yards after that. So just it's going to come down to some of these big plays, big moments in these big games. And it's just whoever could win those, one-on-one battles and stuff like that. Notre Dame's defense actually looked pretty impressive. I know the rain was definitely helping them in the second half, but they really stopped the run well here. Some that I highlighted before the year, their defense isn't bad as a whole. It's more the pass defense, but the run defense was actually really well. Held USC to 68 yards rushing, and then they just really had to throw the ball and still did with some success. I mean, they threw it 42 times. for 328. So definitely, definitely put up some good numbers, but they really could funnel these teams to really be pass happy. Leonard Moore, big shout out to him. He's going to be a high draft pick next year. Kind of went in the slot. He usually plays on the outside. He really locked up Mekhi Lemon, who was having a great year. That was something that not a lot of people were talking about after the game. Only had 3 catches for 50 yards, but he had a big one down the sideline. It was really only like two catches for like 10, 15 yards the whole game. So got to give him a lot of credit. The defense is definitely rounding into form. The passing game definitely was its worst it's been all year. CJ Carr was playing so lights out. And then he just had a couple freshman moments in this game, especially that interception when they're on the 2-yard line, third down. Just he's running around and he's trying to throw it from like the 25 when it's a crowded. I think it was a run play to begin with. So there was a legal man downfield. It was just an absolute one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. So you're going to have that. And that's just there's some faults with this Notre Dame team, and that's where I just don't see them at the moment as like a top 5 team. I think by the end of the year, if they keep playing good and keep progressing, I think they could be in that discussion. But they still have some holes, but it's not some, huge red alert areas I think they got to clean up. But after that, he did kind of settle down, just did what he needed to do. Didn't have a great day at passing, just kind of hit his short stuff. But the run game was really the star of the show. And Jeremiah Love absolutely took it to USC here. You run the ball for 7 yards a pop, which they were doing in this game. I said they could have just went triple option and ran it every play and been successful. Like it was Eagles level dominant with Saquon last year, 306 on the ground, 44 carries. They just really dominated USC. They were talking all that talk. They're so tough now. They beat Michigan. And I was like, I don't know about that. I still think they have some problems stopping the run on that defensive side. And it definitely showed here in Notre Dame. That left guard, they were showing him a little, he was mauling guys and like throwing them around. So really nice to see that. The run game really saved them in this game. And it really, if they didn't have that going, I think they could have got upset. It was definitely a very nice win for Notre Dame. I'll give them like 80, 90%. I felt good about it, but there definitely was still a couple holes I can nitpick a little bit. And one being the special teams we talked about before we got on here, but the missed extra point, they missed one 2 games ago. They missed one in the Texas A&M game, obviously, with the hold. They missed a 33-yard field goal. Didn't bite them here, bit us in the total and the team total like we talked about and spread. So that was frustrating on our part. But for a win-loss, they got to be careful with that if they get into the playoff here. Still not counting it because of all the chaos. I still, just taking it week by week. Like you said, the schedule does ease up. But that special teams could come to bite them. And that's why they kind of had to go for it a lot of times on fourth. They went for a 4th and 15 late in the game where they could have kicked a field goal, would have went over the team total, would have covered the spread. But instead, they just cannot trust the kicker. So they really got to get that figured out. Really the only 2 games now just left on the year. They got Navy, but it's at home at night. And they usually play Navy really well. The Pittsburgh game, we talked about Miami maybe struggling. I think that's going to be another huge test. Would be a little scared about that one. But like you said, Boston College, Syracuse, Stanford, should be pretty heavily favored in those 3 matchups. So still a little bit of work to do, but definitely was an impressive win, but wasn't, like 100% feeling amazing about this team, but definitely felt very good with a lot of things they did. And I think they could clean up some of the mistakes they made and hopefully, get that back on track. And USC going forward, kind of said it. I think they can win the right spots, but I don't think they're a top tier team. I don't think they're there yet. And, the defense and the physicality, I just don't think is there at the level they need it to be to compete with some of these top tier Big Ten and Notre Dame teams.
Yeah, I think the rest of the way at Pittsburgh is probably their biggest challenge left. I know Navy's trying to get some wins together, but I still think they'll handle Navy. I think it's probably at Pittsburgh where they should, win that game for sure. They will be the favorite, obviously, but that's probably their biggest test from here on out, especially because Pittsburgh seems to found something the last few weeks. They got another big win this week, I think, over Syracuse. So watch out for them. And then, CJ Carr wasn't his best game. Of course, the weather was tough, only 136 yards of passing. That interception was really bad. He'll probably do that twice in his career, once as a freshman in college, like he just did. And then he'll probably do it again in a few years when he's on the Cleveland Browns and they come in. And, it seems like for some reason, these NFL quarterbacks, when they're rookies, just will go back and make a freshman in college mistake randomly and do the exact same thing. So hopefully it doesn't happen, but I don't know. Seems like it will. All right. Looks like we may have lost Paisley here a little bit on his internet, or maybe it's my internet. I'm not really sure. But that's pretty much Notre Dame USC. We will go to winners and losers of the week if Paisley joins us back, which hopefully he does, or otherwise I will be giving just mine, and Paisley will have to write his in. Let's see, my winner of the week, I was going to go either BYU and the Big 12, or I was going to go the 4th down and 19 conversion that Wisconsin got, which was insane. I don't know if anybody saw that, but it was a 4th down and 19. Wisconsin had a crazy conversion. It looks like the Ohio State defenders kind of just thought it was a punt, and the punter just took off. So that was my winner. Here we go. Paisley's hopping back on here. Mr. Paisley, looks like you joined us back.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, computer died. A little technical difficulties.
You're good.
Thanks for filibustering. It kept giving me the warnings. I just didn't plug it in for some reason.
We're
all good now.
I kept us going live here, so we were all set. I won't have to do any editing here. But I was going. We wrapped up Notre Dame USC, so I was just going to winners losers. I was going my winner, which you'll actually might like this one, Paisley. It was the 4th down and 19 that the Wisconsin punter had.
Oh, yes.
He converted it. Not a lot going for Wisconsin. I think they were my loser last week, so it was the only highlight probably of the season. I don't think they scored in 10 quarters either. So
that might be right.
That was my win. That was my winner of the week. I actually also had BYU. Just a big shout out to them. Under the radar, staying unbeaten, getting the win. But that's what fun is that, being undefeated. So definitely going the punter for Wisconsin as my winner. So
that was a great call. And another name to add the list, Luke Fickell. I think he's done at Wisconsin. Definitely not working out there. So, but yeah, awesome call there with the punter it was like on their own 15 too. They were backed up in their own territory.
And it was 27-0. They were on their own 15-yard line. So
got to give them credit. But yeah, nice winner there. I got 2 teams I want to shout on the winner category. UAB, touched on them earlier. Interim coach. We talked about the interim coach bounce. I think that's another real thing too. And also a little shout out Penn State. They did have a good fight with the interim coach, lost a tough one there, but just another example where have the coach firing or something like that. UAB fired Trent Dilfer, interim comes in, gets the boys rallied. That's a real thing this year. It's happening. They were 21.5-point dogs, beat Memphis outright. So huge shout out to the Blazers there. And then Stanford too. That was a very late night game against Florida State. We know Florida State's a little down, but they were 18.5-point dogs in that one too. So if you're going to win these games by, catching that many points and win them outright, got to give them a little love there. So big one for Stanford. They're having a rough year, but it looks like they're turning around a little bit. I like when Stanford's good and in the national picture, so I hate to see them down. But UAB and Stanford, nice huge wins for the program there and big upsets.
Yeah, no, I like it. Stanford also, that job's opening, and Florida State job will probably be open next year. We'll see. Yet to be official, but another one to watch there. Some big wins all around. My loser, which I know we kind of hinted at it pre-show, gotta congratulate Mr. Carson Beck as being my loser of the week. A long time coming. Really thought maybe this would be the year he stays off the list. Paisley transfers to Miami. They're talking about this new person down there in Miami, Carson Beck, how he found the love of football again, and everybody was just crowning him, all the adversity that he had to deal with. None is the actual answer. He dealt with nothing except he went to Miami. Playing great first few weeks. Heisman odds, we're looking good, but here he ends up as my loser of the week. 4 interceptions, like we talked about it at the beginning of the podcast. Could have been 5. He's my loser. Congratulations, Carson Beck. Miami season is not over, but it will be in a few weeks once they string together a few more losses, which will happen. I'm not done going against Miami. It's going to happen again. We'll see when, but shout out Carson Beck.
Yeah, if you had a Heisman ticket on him, that's a tough one, because to go all the way down to, like you said, plus 300, plus 400, and now not even a shot, and he really did it to himself. There was nobody else in that one. My loser, I'm going to go Nebraska. It was your boys' case up there, the Cornhuskers in Nebraska, but it was a great call by us. We were on Minnesota. It was a nice win, but I just keep struggling with this Nebraska program. Like, when are they going to take it to the next level? They can't win these big games. I don't think Minnesota wasn't ranked, but they can't beat ranked teams in 0-26, in the last whatever. Like, they are struggling. Matt Rule's name's definitely getting floated for the Penn State job, but I don't know what he's doing in Nebraska to really, get that hype and get that recognition, because that's a good program. They have a lot of resources there. Big Ten West in the past was down, but now obviously with the expansion, but they have Dylan Raiola, the 5-star guy. He's throwing left-handed plays and underhand tosses like Patrick Mahomes. He's not playing like Patrick Mahomes, but he's, a very good quarterback. Just can't get it done. That offensive line, we were texting during that game, I think they gave up 9 sacks, did we say? Which is something on NCAA football 26 numbers there. So that was very disappointing. So again, if I'm a Nebraska fan, booster, very, very upset with that. Another crushing loss. They look like they're just going to stay at that mediocre, 7-5, 8-4 record, and just can't really break through the next level. So Nebraska and that whole program, they're getting my loser of the week this week.
Yeah, that's a good pick. And yeah, we kind of saw this one coming. It felt like on the road Friday night. I was high on Nebraska at times. I was dark horse playoff team at one point. That looks awful now because they just can't get through over the hump. But I don't know what's going on there. They also, it's funny. Matt Rule is being floated for the Penn State job. He had a good record, of course, at Temple. He won a Big 12 championship at Baylor, went to the NFL. He has a good track record, but he's kind of over his peak is the way I look at it, at least as a Penn State fan. I mean, I don't want to criticize him too bad right now because I don't want to sit here in a few months explaining the hire. So, he's got a history of good coaching, but at Nebraska, you have the resources. It's time to win. If you're Nebraska, not just Matt Rule, but just Nebraska as a program, like you've been in this spot for too long. I know what they did, they fired Bo Pelini going 9-3 every year. You finally, bring in Matt Rule. You want to try to solidify themselves. And like you said, you got the 5-star quarterback now. You're starting to, I don't think they're all there yet on the talent, but it's now or next year. And if it's not next year, and if Matt Rule leaves or whatever happens, they're just in a weird spot. Really tough one on Friday. But giving up 9 sacks, go back to the present day. Yeah, the offensive line was literally non-existent. Raiola was running all over the place, took a lot of hits, and Minnesota just dominated the game 24-6. So good pick there, Paisley. Kind of didn't really talk about that game yet, so I'm glad we found a way to fit that in between Minnesota and Nebraska.
Yeah, I think just some of these programs and coaches, they reach a ceiling, or they're maybe, I think some guys you really got to look. I think they're program builders, and Matt Rule really could build the program up, get them from the ashes to get them up. But it's a different level when you want to take a team from mediocre or okay to a championship level, and that's where it's hard to find that coach to really take that next step. But he could really build programs, but I don't know if he could take it to that next level.
All right. I know it was a long one, so appreciate anyone out there that listened through. We will be back on, I guess, Wednesday night per usual, breaking down week 9. I didn't really even look at the slate much, so I know we had a loaded slate this past week, so we'll see now as the season gets on, but it's going to be fun. We got at that point in the season where a lot of games start to matter. Tune in on Wednesday, and then per always, we'll have our weekly slate out on Friday, and then a week from now, next Sunday, we'll be breaking down the week 9 recap. So long, everybody, and see you later this week.